Hello and welcome to Board Game Madness. I'm Mike Ganade, and in today's matchup we have two more gateway style games, certainly lighter games, family-friendly games. We have the number 3 Cascadia and the number 14 seed Azul Summer Pavilion. Making sure I had it the right way up. So again, if you want more information about how these games work, we have a previous round video where they beat their challenger and came out ahead. And in those videos, we go over a quick overview of the games. But just to give a quick overview, in Cascadia, it plays 1 to 4 players. The ages are 10 and up. It says 30 to 45 minutes. And you're taking a journey through the Pacific Northwest and building out matching tiles and biomes, and placing different creatures from the Pacific Northwest in each of those biomes, like salmon, foxes, bears, etc. Azul Summer Pavilion is a more abstract game. It is 2 to 4 players, 30 to 45 minutes. So again, these games are about the same. The age is a little bit lower on this one. It says 8 and up. And in this, you're supposed to be making you're in Portugal and you're making a beautiful palace decoration with these tiles, but the theme is very sort of lightly pasted on in this one. So, there is some historical references to a specific sort of mosaic that was built, but it's a much more abstract game than Cascadia for sure. Okay, let's move on to round 1. And in the second round, I've been trying to tread different water and cover different pieces of things in different rounds. I don't want to say the same thing over and over again, hopefully, trying to make it relevant to the current matchup, because both of these games really do fill a similar role in your collection. They're going to be games you can crack out, play in under an hour for sure, and play with younger players, with families, etc. You're not going to be dumping a lot of rules in either of these games, and in both cases, player turns are very quick. There's not a lot of player downtime in either of these. I would say it's actually a strength of both of them that you're just picking some tiles, picking a chip, a creature chip, picking a tile to place in your biome, and things are moving pretty snappy. So let's talk about my favorite component from each game. Azul is known for these chunky ceramic-like tiles. In this case, they're like diamond tiles. In the first one, they were squares. And it's known for these chunky, gorgeous tiles that you see on the front. And that's obviously my favorite component in this game. It's a great feeling to hold them in the bag, shake them, pick them up from one of the tiles when you're picking them, and then setting them up on your board. Manipulating those tiles and the tactile feel of those tiles is what makes Azul and the Azul series so... it definitely is a feature and a prominent, nice feature of it. Cascadia, my favorite component is probably the wooden disc that the creatures come on. That has a more of a tactile feel and feels really nice. And they're each colored well with a piece of art on them, and you can place them on your hexagon tiles very easily, and they stand out, and it makes navigating the game pretty easy. And I like animals, so I'm going to go with the animal tiles from Cascadia. As far as comparing these two, production-wise, your favorite piece is sort of emblematic of which game I think you'll think has a better production. The tiles in Azul feel so deluxe. They feel so nice and expensive and deluxe. But that's basically all the components you get. There's nothing else in here. There's some cardboard tiles for scoring and things. There's a couple wooden scoring markers, and it's the tiles. The cost of this game is all in those ceramic tiles, so of course it's my favorite component from a production level. Cascadia gives you a little bit more. It's got some, scoring cards with beautiful artwork. It has a bunch of tiles, hexagon tiles that are nice cardboard and chipboard. It's got pine cones. It has these wooden chips for creatures. It has a scoring pad. So I think it's close. I really, really like the tiles in the Azul games. It does feel great. But I think Cascadia's production is a little more refined. I think it has artwork. The theme comes through a little bit stronger. Um, I'm gonna give it to Cascadia. It's close, uh, but I think I lean heavy enough Cascadia that I would give them production. So we're gonna go with that. You can disagree with me in the comments below, but I'm gonna go with Cascadia. I think the higher ranking it has and what you get for your money, it does feel like there's just more in the game. So let's go to game mechanics, and here I'm trying to talk about things I think you may not like or people complain about either of these games. Um, so Cascadia for me, when I think of the negatives, um, there's nothing overly wrong with. I mean, let me get this out. Let me get this out of the way. Both of these games are gateway games and easy to teach. There's no glaring design flaws in either of these games. Obviously, I mean, they got through this round. They both function perfectly well. They're balanced from what I can tell. Um, they really don't have any major flaws with them. I mean, I don't even know what people complain about in Cascadia. I mean, for me, Cascadia, the biggest thing about Cascadia is it's just fine. Like what I'm doing on a turn isn't particularly isn't particularly interesting. I'm just going for the tile that I think matches what I've got going on best. Or I'm taking a creature chip that I can place in an advantageous spot. Like the way you draft tiles, it gives you a certain number of choices, and there's usually a pretty evident choice which is best for you, which keeps turns fast, which I like. Um, the best thing about Cascadia is definitely the different creatures and scoring methods that you can give to each creature type. Each creature has its own scoring methodology, and then there's different cards you can mix and match that change up the way each, the fox or the bear or whatever, the elk are scored each time you play, and that's probably its best feature from a game mechanic side of stuff. But you're just placing tiles and placing creatures on those tiles. The it's like a fine game. Like there's nothing. I find it more relaxing than Azul and less competitive, maybe. So it's more of a doesn't feel not that either of these games have a lot of take that, but I think there's even less take that in Cascadia because you always have a pretty good choice and you're not like dumping a bunch of tiles on somebody like you are in Azul, which can feel bad. So a player who gets dumped on. But there's no big negatives that are going to strike me in either of these games, quite frankly. The only negative I can say with Cascadia is I think it's a fine, solid game. I don't understand the fervor around it. I don't understand what the elements that people think it takes it to the next level. I think it's a very safe game that can please a lot of people, but I don't think it has enough depth to really that really has me wanting to play it over and over again for the different puzzles. And then it's always just fine. I mean, that's really my complaint is that my feelings on it are just very lukewarm in general. And I'm probably one of those few people that just doesn't get why it's so highly seated and why it's so great. Because Azul for me, even though the negatives I'm sure people say on with this is in Summer Pavilion, I think it made a lot of improvements over the original. It made scoring easier and clearer. Gives you more flexibility with getting more pieces from the center board. I really like that aspect of it. But Azul has this major negative interaction, which is when you're going around picking your tiles and throwing everything into the center, the person who ends up taking the center has to take what's left as sort of one of the final people in the round if they don't plan accordingly. They can get dumped with a bunch of tiles they don't need that end up being negative points. And that's just a real big feel bad moment that I can see a lot of people not liking. I don't think it's like that happens randomly. I think it is a skill based thing of how badly that happens to you, and I think there's a lot of things you can do to mitigate it, but certainly as players are learning it, that's a big feel-bad moment, and I don't think Cascadia has any major feel-bad moments from the times I've played it. There's nothing like that where there's a big gotcha at the end of the game or at the end of the round, which Azul can have that at the end of the round, that big gotcha of, haha, you took 6 reds, and like that really messes you up. And that, it's a feel-bad moment that some players may dislike and can certainly ruin the mood at a table. So anyone interested in these games should take that into account. That being said, between these two games, which are very similar, sort of spatial puzzle type games where you're drafting, in this case, you're drafting tiles, and in this case, you're drafting tiles as well to place in your own thing and animal chips. Like you're drafting sort of two different things, whereas you're only drafting one thing in this. So they both sort of involve drafting from this public section. But for me, I take Azul Summer Pavilion any day. I just think the game is much smoother and more enjoyable. I actually like the tension of everyone taking those tiles and looking at the pile growing and being like, oh, I can't take that one. The tension of that is just more interesting to me than Cascadia, which has a similar tone just throughout the whole game. I don't think there's any ups and downs in Cascadia. There's no exciting moments. You're just drafting every turn and you're continuing to build your little nature preserve or connecting your points and puzzle sort of in front of you. It's a very solitaire experience. So for me, that solitaire aspect of it, the fact that I'm barely interacting with other players at the table, the only thing I'm doing is drafting something that another player may want based on the tableau, but something new is going to come out. I don't feel like I'm messing them up that much. So for me, Cascadia doesn't have those ups and downs and that tension in each round and in the overall competitive nature of the game. Azul for me is just much stronger game mechanics wise. I can't describe it. It really is. I'm clearly wrong because this is seated so much higher. But Cascadia is one of those games where I got it because so many people loved it, and I think it's fine. I just don't love it. I don't get the fervor, like I mentioned before. I just really don't get the fervor. I think the artwork's fantastic. There's other things about it I think are phenomenal. But the gameplay part of it is just sort of like, it's fine. It's solid. So for me, Summer Pavilion, no question here on game mechanics. I'm definitely putting that through there. As far as theme goes, I've got to be honest. The Azul theme of all the Azuls stinks. Like, I can't tell you the difference between the Azuls as far as the story or theme goes. I can just tell you the different shapes of the tiles. The first one's squares. The next one's like see-through squares, like a stained glass window. This one's triangles. Queen's Garden, I forget the shape. I haven't played it as much. But it's got a different shape of tile, or a different sort of, you're building a different type of way. But they're all very abstract, and the theme does nothing for me. Cascadia has a real theme. It's got beautiful artwork for animals. I'm setting up tiles that are relevant to the Pacific Northwest. I'm connecting terrain that matches what the Pacific Northwest looks like, and I'm focusing on animals that are in the Pacific Northwest. They've got bears, eagles, elk, foxes, and salmon, in the base game at least. I know there's some expansions that probably add new stuff, but those are the animals you get, and each of them has unique scoring. So for me, theme, Cascadia, there's, what is Azul? What is this theme? It says on the back that the 16th century King Manuel commissioned Portugal's greatest artisans to construct grandiose buildings. They built the palaces of Ora and Sintra. The king sought to build a summer pavilion in honor of the most famous members of his royal family. I mean, I don't feel like any of that's going on in the game at all. None of that stuff is prevalent other than in that synopsis. It feels like I'm putting tiles together to make a pretty, I don't even know, like a star-shaped pattern. Like, it doesn't even look like a summer pavilion, really. But there you have it. That's sort of what you get with Azul. You get great game mechanics and a really compelling game, but I don't think you get anything in the way of theme. And that goes pretty much across the board for all the Azuls for me. Cascadia gives you some theme, so we've got to give it to Cascadia. Which means, at this point in time, Cascadia looks like it's winning. We've got a close matchup here. Replayability, man. Replayability, you know, replayability, Cascadia has these creatures, these different scoring cards which change up the puzzle. It has some replayability where the bears score a little differently, the elks score a little differently with how you group them together on the tiles that you're placing on your map. Azul Summer Pavilion does not have much replayability. The boards have two different sides. There's a more restrictive side of the board to put your diamonds in, and a less restrictive side. And that's about it. So there's no inherent replayability as far as components or scoring things that are added in Azul Summer Pavilion that make it more replayable. But in my house, I have played Summer Pavilion 5 times more than Cascadia, maybe more, 10 times maybe. It's something we get to the table way more. So I think that there's something about the game mechanics that make it inherently more replayable than Cascadia. I think Cascadia may have it on features. It has the family mode, which is pretty simple, but it's nice that you can play with really young kids very easily. When I first got it, my kids were younger. I did play that mode. It's less interesting than the main game, obviously, but it works, and the kids can understand it and do the actions in the game relatively easily. I'm having a hard time on paper here not giving this to Cascadia, but I almost want to throw a penalty in here and say, for me, the clear winner, like if this came down to the game I had to get rid of, there's no way I'd get rid of Azul Summer Pavilion. There's no way. I'd absolutely get rid of Cascadia first, because I just don't get the I was shocked when I looked at the board game seedings and it was as high as it was. It's not, and again, it's not that Cascadia is a bad game. It's just yet another nature game in this long line of games about nature. I mean, Cascadia, Windspin, you've got all these games about nature, and sure, the theme is technically more tied to what's going on in the game, but Azul's look is more unique, and the gameplay, in my opinion, is a lot better. Like, I see the appeal of the Azuls, whereas I don't see them in Cascadia. So I'm going to give replayability for Azul just for the sheer fact that when it comes to wanting to play a game over and over again, I've shown, having owned these games, this one's 2019, this one's a little earlier, this is 2021. I've played Azul Summer Pavilion so many more times, and I've played all the other Azuls. So when I factor in all the other Azuls, like behind this one, then this is my favorite Azul probably. The base game, and I played Sintra. I still have the base game. I've got Stained Glass of Sintra. I've got Queen's Garden. I've got 4 Azuls, and I've played all of them a lot. And I played Summer Pavilion probably the most because it's our favorite in the house. And I still would want to play this over Cascadia. So from a replayable standpoint, I'm going to give it Azul the win there. And I'm sort of going to let my personal preferences here shine, because for me, we're tied up now, and we've got this winning production. Production's close, but I'll give it that it has the art and stuff and has some more components going on in this one. But I think production's pretty close as far as, what we should do? We should break down each category here a little bit more into, maybe 1 out of 4 stars for production. I'd give production over here 3 stars, 3.5. Gameplay, I'd go like 4 stars. And this is like middle of the road 2 stars, if you're thinking about like movie. Theme, 3 stars, 2 stars, maybe 2.5. It's another nature game, but it is stronger than Azul's sort of abstract nature. And then replayability, I'd give this 3.5 and this 2.5, something like that. So I think when you sort of factor how much Azul's winning in these categories, sort of as the tiebreaker, Azul's the game I would pick. And you can, let the yelling begin in the comment section. But this is my favorite games. This is my countdown, and there's no way I can put Cascadia through because it's a fine game. I can't be critical of any of the mechanisms in it or the production, but it's just not something that I'm compelled to put on the table when push comes to shove. When push comes to shove and I'm looking at all the games on my shelf, I never look to Cascadia, and I can't even remember the last time I played it. Whereas Azul, if I don't ask for it and don't pick it out, my wife certainly is. It's one of my go-tos for new players that want something a little more in-depth with puzzling and scoring. Azul is, and Summer Pavilion is one of my favorite Azuls, and I just have to put Azul through in what probably is going to be a major upset and an uproar in the comment section. So I hear you. I'm going to acknowledge that when I looked at Board Game Geek and put the seating together, everyone out there prefers Cascadia. So please keep that in mind. You may be one of those people that thinks I'm absolutely crazy. But for me, if you ask me which of these two games I would rather play, right now, tomorrow, next week, I'm going to pick Azul every time. I think that speaks to replayability. I think it speaks to its game mechanics, and I think it's the reason I have to put it through. So Azul is going to win today's most likely super controversial video. So sorry to everyone out there. I just don't get Cascadia. I don't get why it's so high. If it was Wingspan, I'd be like, okay, at least I get it. I may not pick it, but I don't know how it would fare against Azul. But it would certainly stand a better chance than Cascadia, I think, for me personally at least. So that's going to do it for today. As always, please like and subscribe in the videos. I'm prepared for you to yell at me in the comments on this one. Let me know what I got wrong. Let me know what I'm missing in Cascadia that makes it so great. Happy to play it again. Obviously, I have it in my collection, and I do enjoy it. It's just one of those things like, it's a game that I just forget about, and it's fine. It's good. But I would never push people to pick it. If someone looked on my shelf and wanted to play it, fine. But I'm not going to seek it out, I don't feel like. So that's where I stand on these two games. Yell at me in the comments below, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much for watching.